We'll wait just a minute more and we'll start sharp at 6:30 p.m. Good evening, everyone. I am Khushi Bhardwaj, and I, on behalf of Alumni Relations Society, welcome you all to this interactive session with Ms Neelasha Nemani, wherein she'll be taking us through her journey from NLUO to Clifford Chance. Before we begin, I would request the attendees to keep their audios and videos off for the session to minimize any technical glitches. I should tell you that there is a possibility that most of our questions would be covered by Nilasha in the session. Therefore, in the interest of no repetition, I would request you to reserve your questions till the end of the session and put them in the chat box when told during the question and answer round. Now, I would officially like to welcome Ms. Neelasha Nemani, and may I say, we are absolutely thrilled to have you with us today. Now, we have raved about you all across our social media and invitation mails, but just in case someone missed, I'd like to take a minute to introduce you. So, Ms. Neelasha Nemani is our alumna from the batch of 2017. Right after graduation, she started her career with J. Sagar Associates, wherein she later got promoted to senior associate in the year 2021. In 2021 itself, she got an offer from Cambridge University to pursue Masters in Corporate Laws. While she is yet to graduate from Cambridge in July 2022, she has already bagged an offer from Clifford Chance, one of the most prestigious Magic Circle firms in the world. Now, having worked extensively in the field of corporate laws for 4+ years now, she holds an expertise in banking and finance law. Once again, welcome Nilasha, and without any further ado, let's begin with the session. I think you're on mute, Nilasha.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sure. So thank you so much. It was a very lovely introduction. Are you able to see me? Because my video is freezing.
No, you're perfectly clear for us.
You're able to see me? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the outset, I'd like to thank everybody for joining in on a Thursday evening when you all could have easily been doing something more fun. But here you are, attending a session about how to plan your corporate law career. But yeah, I'm very grateful that all of you have joined. So, Khushi, how do you want to do this? Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll just moderate and ask you certain questions, certain obvious questions, and you can take us through all them. So, Nilasha, let's start from the beginning. If we talk about your law school life, receiving a PPO from J. Sagar Associates in your fourth year itself, it's a distinguished achievement, and not many are able to secure. And this was especially during the time you graduated. Our college wasn't that well recognized among tier one firms. So, what do you think were the important steps or strategies that you undertook in your law school that led you to getting a PPO in the end of your fourth year itself?
Sure. So, So like you said, I do think that in fact getting the internship itself is, it is difficult. I think that especially at the time when, you know, our institution wasn't very well known, I feel like that's a distinguishing factor between going to a well recognized institution and say NLUO at the time. I'm still very grateful because at the time, the only way to get an internship at these tier one law firms used to be through reference. You know somebody who knows somebody and therefore has to sort of put you in touch. So I'm still very grateful to the person who helped me get my internship at GSA for the first time. But after that, I knew that, you know, it was in my hands and it was about how I would make that work for myself. But to take a step back, so my CV, honestly, in law school wasn't what you'd probably expect. I didn't graduate with, you know, gold medals in subjects. I wasn't rank one. In fact, I didn't even do any moots. I hope this is encouraging to at least somebody here. But, you know, all of this goes to say that effectively for me, I was very clear on what it is that I wanted. For me, I think what worked for me was just streamlining my sort of thought process on what it is that I wanted. So right in my second year, I decided that I wanted to work at a law firm, and I had, you know, started looking up law firms, and then I came across JSA, and then, you know, I was like, okay, I see myself working here, so this is the place that I want to sort of apply to. And when I got that internship, I was like, okay, I have to make the most of this. So what I did though, so while I didn't, you know, moot and stuff, I spent a lot of time in college having fun. I played a lot of sports. I went out, made a lot of friends. I did all of that. But on the side, what I did do though was that I actually did a lot of research publications. So I used to write a lot. And since I was interning, so I started interning with GSA, I think in 2015, and I started working with the banking and finance teams. So I was like, okay, I might as well, if I'm doing papers, I might as well just do some research on banking law, because banking is not something that we study in undergrad, right? So it's actually very, very, I mean, when you start working, you're like, okay, what is this? I've never done this before. So, yeah, so I actually started getting involved in some, you know, papers, and I used to write for India Cop Law blog, which is the blog that Umakant Varutil runs. So I did that, and then I slowly started working my way up to journals, for example. And on the side, other than just banking and finance, I was also trying to see if maybe there's any other area of corporate that I like. So I was, you know, I'd written a paper in, you know, on antitrust. I had written a paper on tax, just to sort of figure out what it is that I like. Um, but in the end, I think what really worked for me, and I think it's important that everybody keeps this in mind when they are interning, especially at a tier one law firm, is that there is no sort of substitute for hard work while you're at your internship, right? Because when you are interning, you've got, say, a period of 4 weeks, or sometimes they extend you and they give you 6 weeks. But you need to make the most of that. You need to make sure that you're going to everybody on and, you know, asking them for work. You need to make sure you're getting recognized. You need to be super proactive about it. You need to um, try and get involved as much as you can with the team, right? Whether it's transactions, whether it's, you know, just assisting them with some knowledge management work, doing research for them, whatever it is. But the point is, you need to get noticed, and you need to sort of showcase that you are somebody who's willing to stick around. You're taking your internship super seriously, and yeah, I mean, a go-getter in that sense, right? Because it's pretty much all they're looking for at that level, because you're too young to sort of, you know, showcase anything else. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what it is that I did. And obviously, I mean, there's an element of luck. There's an element of being at the right place at the right time, which I can't take away. So yeah, that's how JSA happened in 2016, and then I started working with them in 2017 once I graduated.
All right, like rightly said, being at the right place at the right time is something nothing like, it's a very important thing, and it plays a major role along with your hard work. So,
Right.
rightly said, and
Undoubtedly.
yeah. And I hope all the first and second years and even fourth years are taking notes, because now is the time we are doing these tier one internships, and I think it will be really helpful.
Yeah, and just
So,
to sort of add to that, actually, since we're already at it, I feel like, you know, if you really want to have a career at a law firm, it is okay if you haven't started yet and you're in your fourth year, fifth year, whatever. It is fine, but there's obviously an advantage to starting as early as possible. And by as early as possible, I don't mean first year, because you need to start working in these places when you think that there's something you're going to be able to take away. And I think third year is a good time. But you need to do your research about the firms. You need to do a little bit of research about the place that you're going to be interning at, about the people you're taking work from, and do a little bit of, I mean, I don't know how much background reading really helps, because it's not like, you've gotten through law school enough to really have that sort of foundation. But you need to do all of that to sort of make the best use of your internship while you have it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All right. So you worked at JSA for almost 4 years, eventually getting promoted to senior associate. But instead of chasing that high, you decided to pursue masters. So what led to this turn of events? Was it always a plan, or something clicked at that time? You transitioned from working to getting back to academics, which is a huge transition again. So
Yeah.
tell us about it.
So again, to be very candid with you, I had never planned on doing a master's when I was in NLUO, because had I planned on doing a master's, I would have done things a little differently. I would have focused a little more on my academics, and I would have focused a little more on doing, say, a few more co-curricular activities, which are quite important from a master's application, but we'll get to that separately. So no, I was very sure I just wanted to work at a law firm and just get on with it, which is what happened. But when I finished, so I did about 4.5 years at JSA. Um, and in 2020, when the pandemic hit, and all of us had gotten our time to sort of introspect and figure out what it is that we want to do. At that point, I felt like this is great, and I'm in a very comfortable spot, so to speak. But it maybe it could be nice to sort of get out, go abroad, study, firstly take a break. I really wanted to take a break. It had started to become very hectic, and I just wanted to, I mean, there were a lot of things going on personally as well, so I just wanted to take a little bit of a break, and from work. But at the same time, I thought, let's make it productive, because eventually it might be a nice idea to get some sort of exposure working abroad. So it was a very random idea. It wasn't very well planned, honestly, if I can be candid with you. So, because I know when I have interacted with a lot of people who apply for a master's, they think about it right from undergrad. In fact, they plan well in advance. They apply to like 8, 10 schools. They're applying to the US, UK, Singapore, um, I don't know, a lot of other places in Europe. I didn't have the luxury of time to do that, because it was fairly like I was on the fence about it for a really long time. But for me, the course that I really wanted to do was the MCL course at Cambridge, which is what I'm doing right now. And for me, if that hadn't worked out, I would have just probably continued with JSA, because I'd just gotten promoted anyway. So I was just about sort of starting to pick up in my career as well. So yeah, that's actually the honest truth about how it is that my sort of Cambridge idea came along.
All right, great. So, did you face any trouble during this transition? Like I said, like going from a 4 year
Yeah.
experience to a student life back. So, are there any specific troubles you faced?
Right. So there's a few things about it. So now, one thing to keep in mind is that the course that I'm doing, the Master of Corporate Laws, it's a very practice oriented course. So, in fact, I would think at least, so firstly, it's a very small cohort. I think we're a total of 28 people. And out of the 28 of us, I'm sure like a good 14, 15 people have come with work ets. So, it's a very, very sort of different cohort in that sense compared to the generic LLM, where you have a lot more students who come in straight from undergrad. So because it's a very practice oriented course, I feel like, which is why, in fact, actually, that's one of the reasons, to sort of going back to my earlier response as well, that I felt like going and doing a master's right now, having about 4.5 experience, is a great time to do it at. So from that perspective, I didn't really have much of a trouble transitioning. But yeah, to some extent, the fact that you have to study and the fact that you need to take exams. So for me, I have exams at the end of every term. So every 8 weeks, I'm writing exams. So that is actually quite difficult because the last exam I wrote was in 2017, and I have completely forgotten what it's like to sort of memorize things or make like bookmarkings and notes and all of that. But that was a little difficult. But I feel like that was the smallest part of the challenge. Because otherwise, I feel like it's a fantastic break for anybody who wants to consider doing a master's, especially after some work ex. I think it's a fantastic break. It's productive. It gives you a lot of new perspectives. You're also meeting people from various places. There's a tremendous exchange of ideas and all of that during class. So yeah, I think from that perspective, I think it's a great um, opportunity.
Yeah, so you mentioned like going back to making bookmarks and memorizing things, that's a little tough. And given the standard of exams we used to have back at NLUO, so
Yeah,
that I think the level is
it's
quite different,
very
hell
very
and heaven
different.
difference. So
Yes.
yeah, so it like obviously you're getting used to it and you're learning new things every day.
Yeah, I
Um,
honestly the course is so short. I don't even know if I'm going to really get used to it by the time I'm done. But yeah, it is very different. If I'm being honest, the kind of the way exams are taken here, they're super analytical. They're very essay based. Each answer is about 2,000 words. 1,500 words. You have a very quick time limit. It's very different, but it's a great learning experience. So
Certainly, I can agree with you without not even being a part of that experience. So, so you are still completing your master's from Cambridge, and you will be joining Clifford Chance later this year. I mean, this is again absolutely incredible. We all have heard stories, and you only told us about the hectic schedule of Cambridge, and juggling that with your preparation for jobs like sounds like a nightmare because I would assume that Clifford Chance is a firm who will have a very elaborate procedure for selecting their candidates. So what has it been your approach in studying for masters as well as simultaneously landing one of the most sought after jobs in the world?
um, so quite honestly, okay, so my course started in October. So October and November, I had my course, and then we had, um, I think, I can't even remember now, but sometime in December is when my holidays started, and I had about 3 to 4 weeks of a break. So it was in those 3 to 4 weeks that I decided that now the term is over. I still did. I mean, I'm also involved in some co-curricular, extracurricular activities here, and I had some deadlines through the break and stuff. But see, point is that you're probably never going to be in a situation where you have something to work towards, and you have all the time in the world to work towards it. You're always going to have something happening on the side. So the only way in which you can achieve all these things is by being meticulously planned. So for me, I knew when I came to Cambridge that I had to figure out law firm applications as soon as possible. But you know, I definitely have to get cracking the moment my exams are over and we have this break. So I know a lot of my friends were traveling, for example, they were going around Europe and stuff. But I was like, no, I need to sit down and I need to figure out these applications. So that's kind of how it happened. So in that sense, I think it was well done because I didn't really have coursework as such to do. Uh, but at the same time, the only way I could manage was by ensuring that I get through this entire, recruitment process quickly over the course of, 2 to 4 weeks, so that it doesn't come in the way of term time, which it narrowly did because my term had just started. Um, Post which I had to finish my second and third rounds at Clifford Chance. But yeah, that's kind of how I approached it. But from okay, now when you talk about the application process, right? It's since I was applying laterally, it's a little different. So sorry, there seems to be some notification.
No, no, yeah, you go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. So since I was applying laterally, it was a little different. So I will tell you how I met Clifford Charles. During one of my modules where I needed to make a presentation, and I that was on acquisition finance. they had invited a partner and a senior associate from Clifford Chance to judge the presentation. So I was one of the 9 students who had presented, and that's how we had the opportunity. Which is why I definitely have to sort of give credit where due to Cambridge, because I do feel like Cambridge gives us these opportunities that maybe are hard to come by in certain other institutions. But yeah, I had this opportunity to meet Clifford Chance through Cambridge, and we had a social event where I was chatting to the partner and I told him about my profile, and he said, "Okay, why don't you send your application to the HR?" So that's how it happened. So I sent it to the HR. I was, of course, applying for a different team, not the one that this partner worked in, but that's how it happened, where the HR guided me to the careers page and asked me to apply, upload my CV there. And she said she'd reach out to me if the team was interested in interviewing me. And then she came back a couple of days later and she said that the team that I applied to, she said that they were interested. So it was super quick from there, because from there they looked at my CV, they said, okay, we want to interview you. And we had 2 rounds of interview and a written assessment, all of which happened, I think, over the course of 8 to, I think, a maximum of 10 days. And they gave me the offer a day later. So it was super quick. It was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of, also, I think the pressure really comes from also having to prepare for the interview, because it starts with a notion that, oh my god, it's a magic circle firm, so it must be really difficult. It's honestly, now that I have been made an offer, I think it's safe to say that a lot of it is a notion. Of course, they're very big, there's no doubt about it. But and the interview process was very grilling in that sense, but it's very achievable, is what I realized when I'm on this side, right? That it just takes meticulous preparation. So I went back to my CV. I looked through all the transactions that I had mentioned on my CV, and I just put my head down and I started making notes about every transaction and what I think are the important aspects of the transaction that I might be questioned on. I didn't have much time because Clifford Chance gave me 2 days before they set up the first round, I think. So I didn't have much time, but what else could I do? For me, I think what I was telling myself was that I have spent 4.5 years working. So 2 days is like just it's good time to sort of revise in that sense. But the work that I've done was for 4.5 years. The questions they're going to ask me are going to be about the work that I had done. So that's how I try to like pep myself up. But yeah, I hadn't even mentioned to too many people that I was making these applications. So there was a very limited pool of people that I could reach out to for any sort of guidance in that sense. But yeah, that's how I approached it.
So, is it a normal thing that they just give like 8 to 10 days, or was there a vacancy in the team and that's why they were, like accelerating the process altogether?
See, usually the hiring happens when they have a vacancy. But right now, what's happening in the market is that because of COVID, there have been a lot of people who've been shifting firms, right, or quitting altogether. So now that COVID has, I don't know if I can say settled down, but if to whatever extent COVID has settled down, I think now's when law firms also are identifying that okay, this is the new normal. We need to continue to grow and expand. So there seem to be some vacancies at a slightly higher experience, because how it works here in the UK is that if you're a fresh grad, typically you go through the vacation scheme and training contract process. But I am a lateral hire because obviously, I wasn't going to do the training contract route, right? Because I did have about 4.5 years work ex. So they only considered me as a lateral hire. So for them, yes, they did have either they had a vacancy or they're looking to expand. But what also happens is that it's very competitive, not just for applicants, but even firms are competing against each other, right? So everybody wants to close the process as soon as possible, and that's something I learned just before I started making these applications because I'd spoken to a couple of people who'd been through this entire journey last year, and they told me that the moment you apply, if they want to interview you, they will give you a couple of days, you know and that's probably what you can expect, because everybody wants to just get through with the interviews, and then the firms want to take a call as to whether they want to hire you or not, so that if they want to keep you, then they will try, and they also don't want you to go to another firm, right? Because they need resources as well. So that's kind of how it works. I don't think it's set in stone, but this has been my experience with it.
Yeah, as you were speaking, I can just compare the Indian process with the that of UK's. Like 10 days is like in a normal application, you forget about getting a callback or getting a revert from their side like for 20 days or some. So we can see the drastic differences between foreign firm and that of an Indian firm. So yeah,
No, but I
that's
should
really
point out actually, again, even as far as Indian law firms are concerned, this is not set in stone again, right? Because I know a lot of people who have made applications to Indian law firms, and sometimes when there's a vacancy, firms want to close it quickly because there are multiple. So when a firm is hiring, and just even say talk about India, right? When a team is hiring, they have multiple applications coming in. But if they have a vacancy and they want to close that quickly, they're going to try and interview a bunch of people every day. So, if you are making an application, you need to be somewhat prepared that they might only give you 24 hours and you need to show up and do your interview, right? So, I think that's something that is very important to keep in mind, um, because there's no guarantee you're going to get a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It really depends on partner availability. And if a partner is only available 24 hours later and not for the rest of the week, they're going to schedule it 24 hours later. So that's something that, yeah, you should expect. It's a worst case scenario, so may as well go in expecting it.
definitely. So, have you been able to identify what set you apart or what made you stand out from most of the applicants that you were hired?
So honestly, I don't even know how many other applications they were looking at. But I can maybe tell you about what I think may have worked, at least through the feedback that I had gotten from Clifford Chance, right? So I had interviewed with Clifford Chance and a few other um, law firms here as well, and there was a mix of Magic and Silver Circle. Now, at my level, what it is that they are looking at is, see, for them it's quite simple. For them, they are seeing that there is somebody who with a 4 5 year experience in another jurisdiction who is going to come and work with them at a slightly lower level, because they need to obviously deduct some experience, right? I don't have experience in their market. What they are looking at really is how well do I know my transactions? What is the role that I had played in my transactions, right? And basis whatever role I was playing, did I do justice to that role? How much commercial and business sense do I have? How much do I understand the product? Because the transactions that I have done, although I mean at GSA also you do very cutting edge deals, you do a lot of cross border deals and all of that, but my work experience does not have any direct connection with the sort of work they do, especially like this team. They do fairly different type of work, but they just want to put me back in my situation and then try to assess me from that perspective, right? So how much does she know from what she has done? And a lot of it obviously is, you know, the confidence with which you go in, the clarity with which you go in, all of that is important. So I feel like a lot of times maybe they're not comparing you with other applicants, but they are judging you on the basis of some standard that they are setting, in terms of what it is that they expect from a resource. And if you meet that, then you meet that. Because also because these firms are pretty big, they do have an appetite to hire. So I think if they think that you are meeting a certain threshold, they would want to hire you, because sometimes it's always helpful to have some hands on deck, right? Also because I mean every law firm expects that somebody's going to join today, somebody's going to quit tomorrow, and I've seen a lot of people quit through the 4.5 years that I was at GSA, and it's a regular cycle that you're very used to seeing at law firms. So yeah, I think that's what happened with me, at least basis the feedback that I had received from the partners at Clifford Chance.
Yeah, so you
So
put it really modestly, which I should commend you for. And so, undoubtedly, it takes a village to have as successful a career as yours. So if I may ask, like, what role did your mentors or your friends or your seniors play in this feat of yours? And do you think it made a huge difference if you would have done it alone, or vice versa? Like,
Okay, so I'd like to put this out there, and I mean, thank you for like putting your question across so nicely, and that was very sweet of you to frame it that way. But very honestly, I feel like while some may think that this is the textbook definition of success, I do want to put it out there that I've had my fair share of rejections and failures. Okay, and that's the thing about being in this place, right? Like people only see that you've gone to Cambridge or you have a Clifford Chance job. They don't see which other university. Like for example, I applied to Oxford, I got rejected, but nobody sees that because it's not there anywhere. It's only lying somewhere in my Gmail, right? So that's something that I want to put out there, and I want to try and be as candid and realistic as possible to let you know that all of this is very achievable, and achieving it doesn't mean that you have not failed and gotten rejected many times in your life. It's all a process of getting there because for example, I had done an interview just before Clifford Chance, and there were some mistakes that I made through that interview, and those are the exact questions that I worked on for my interview with Clifford Chance, which was a day later, and it was tremendously helpful, right? So I see the previous one as a failure, and this one, in that sense, this round of the interview is a success. But coming to my mentors, honestly, I don't think it would have been possible to do it alone at all. Um, so at JSA, I had some mentors who invested in me right from day one. They've dealt with literally, the Neelasha that came out of NLUO knew nothing at all at the time, um, and they really helped me every step of the way. Not just with during transactions and just during my time at JSA, but I think after that, like some of them have invested in me so much that I would talk to them about like a potential career abroad, or should I apply for a master's, how do I go about it, do you think it's good for me, when do you think I should do it. And some of them were definitely there throughout to sort of help me also derive some clarity in the process. Even with my interviews and Clifford Chance in particular, I called some, a couple of my mentors who I had sort of, I'd kept them in the loop that I was making applications abroad. And yeah, I actually asked them questions, and I was like, how do you think I can do this? Or how do you think I can say this better? Or what do you think I should, how do you think I should do this, for example? So they have guided me every step of the way. So I owe my mentors everything because I think honestly, without them, I don't think I would have been here. So you guys know who you are, so thank you so much. I'm sure some of you are probably watching this on live stream. So thank you so much to my mentors and my friends, especially at JSA, who really stuck around while I was going through all of this.
right, that
So
is really nice to hear. And yeah, like I said, it takes a village. So I like you're really fortunate. Like I hope we are as fortunate as you are to have that kind of people in our lives, so that they can, you know, guide us through all these things we are about to do. So I think that all from my side. Let's open for the attendees here. So if you guys have any specific questions, now is the time to just type it out in the chat box. Uh, so you can type it on the chat box, and I'll ask Neelasha. Meanwhile, we do have some questions from the people who are watching in the live stream from other universities as well. So, one of the questions is like, how difficult is it to jump directly to a foreign firm after working in an Indian firm? And what do you think is the better route? Like going through your master's or going through LLM for that matter, or applying directly since you have like, a couple of years of experience. So, what do you think
got
would
it.
be better?
Okay, see, very honestly, there's no right way or wrong way to do this. Okay, now what happens is when, like right now, for example, it's a great time to use this example because since there are so many opportunities in foreign law firms right now, there have been a lot of people who are working in India right now who have applied directly to these law firms and have made it. Okay, so it's not like you cannot. What happens when you, in fact, if you also need to qualify and you need to take the solicitor's exam here, for example, you don't need a degree in the UK and you can go ahead and write it. And I know some people who do that. But what does happen is that when you do come here for a master's, especially in a situation where the market is not flourishing like it is right now, they are going to focus their attention on students who are graduating from their country and not yours, right? So that's when I feel like doing a master's is helpful. So that's number one. Secondly, doing a master's also here also means that you have networking opportunities that you don't get when you're in India. And while sometimes it may work, see, usually these processes of applications are very transparent. You go onto the website, you go to the careers page, you look up vacancies. They will list it out very clearly. They will say, we're looking for somebody with 1 year PQE or 2 years PQE, 6 years PQE. They will write it and you can apply and it's very transparent, right? But the advantage of, again, coming here is that you are getting the opportunity to um, meet some of these people and network, which might give you a better idea of what it is that you want to do and where it is that you want to go. But the short point to your question is, yeah, you don't have to do an LLM. Also, I mean, it is a very expensive deal, right? It's not something that everybody would want to commit to. Um, I mean, I have no regrets. I think that this decision is the easily the best decision that I have made in my life, because it's not just from an academics point of view, but just the exposure that you get, the people you meet, the country that you're living in. It's great. But yeah, from a work perspective, it's not absolutely required at all.
All right. So I think we have a couple of questions here. So we have a question from Arjun. I think it's similar to that what you addressed right now. Should one go for LLM right after undergraduation or having some work experience? Okay. So he's
Okay, so
trying
that
to
I'll
ask
come.
like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that actually it's a very, very important question, and I know a lot of people talk about it. So again, there again is no right way or wrong way to do it, because like I mentioned, we have a lot of people here who have come straight from undergrad, and there are a lot of people who come with work ex. Firstly, I think it's important that you figure out what it is that which course it is that you want to do. If you want to do an LLM, um, you can still consider coming directly from your undergrad. But if you want to do a practice oriented course like the MCL here or the MLF at Oxford, or there are similar programs that are offered by schools in the US as well, which are more focused on corporate and are practical in their application. Especially if you're applying to a course like that, my personal opinion is that you should definitely come with some work ex. And even as far as LLM is concerned, my preference, if you would ask me, would always be go for a master's after you get at least 2 to 3 years of experience in, because that's when it's a game changer. Otherwise, you're just coming from one institution to another and there's nothing you have learned in between. The whole idea behind doing a master's is not coming to this country and studying English law or American law or whatever, right? It's the class participation, which is, I think, 99% of the experience of being here. And there's no point to that class participation because majority of the people have very practical questions. People want to understand how something impacts practice, or what is the reason why it is different from one jurisdiction to another. And these are questions that your takeaway will just be a lot more if you have work experience. And this is also what I gather from people who have come here directly after, directly from undergrad, and not, with any work experience. And they are also starting to feel like, okay, could have been a good idea to get a little bit of work ex. So personally, if you ask me, and don't quote me here because everybody has different experiences, but personally, if you ask me, I think you'll just be able to extract a lot more out of your LLM if you have some work ex. And in my view, the ideal time is 2, 3, 4 years. 3, 4 years, actually.
All right. That's great. So Ashri asks like, is there any kind of exam or something to be eligible to work as a lawyer in a particular country?
Yeah. So so in the US, for example, you need to take the bar, and every state has a different bar there. Usually, the bar exams that people take are the New York bar and the California bar. Here, you have the SQE, which is the exam that we write to qualify as solicitors. But how it works is that you get a job with a law firm, you start working. They give you, say, a time period. Excuse me. They give you a time period. They say you can write the bar and qualify this exam within 2 years. So that's something they specify. But can you get a job and start working? Yes, you can, because I have not qualified in the UK, and I am treated as a lawyer qualified outside of the UK, but I still have an employment contract. So
So they have told you like you'll be needed to, pass the SQA exam like you
So
mentioned.
we haven't spoken about it yet. My call with them is today, but yeah, I mean, I expect that they will tell me that I should probably be taking that exam.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do it anyway. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
in the
better
US, I
actually,
know
I
for the
think.
fact that US law firms will need you to take the bar. So people do sit the bar, and it's a very difficult exam. So, which is why I think they give you 2 years, so you have two attempts at it. But yeah, you need to do that. But you should definitely qualify in India, guys, because I mean, in India, the bar exam is not hard, but you need to qualify so that you are able to represent yourself as a qualified lawyer. So just your degree doesn't have much value in that sense, because the question that they ask you is, have you qualified? And they ask you to give them a copy of your bar certificate. So please write the AIBE as soon as you can. Whether you intend on just being in India or abroad, it's it's very, very useful to have that.
Yeah. So I think Pradyumna's question gets answered in whatever you right now mentioned, because yeah, she has a call right now, whether it's true for lateral hiring or not, but we'll get to know that soon if the SQA exam is relevant for lateral hiring. So Apurva
Right.
asked, like, how different is the work profile at Clifford Chance from when you were at JSA in the banking and finance team, assuming that you are in the same subject area?
Okay, so how it works in India and abroad is a little different, okay? Because in India, you will have a banking and finance team which will do everything. And the good part about that is, if you're on the banking finance team, you'll do a little bit of everything, okay? Abroad, there are slightly stricter verticalizations. So, for example, in India, I was part of the larger banking and finance team, and I did a little bit of everything, almost everything. But here at Clifford Chance, I'm going to be doing structured finance, asset finance, and real estate finance in particular. So here it's a lot more, verticalized in that sense. In fact, one of the other firms that I was looking at specifically asked me for a role on their real estate finance team. So you're doing it, as narrow as that. So that's entirely possible. But yeah, you can expect there to be some strict verticalization. Usually tends to happen because they're much bigger teams, and like the scale at which they operate is a lot more vast than India.
Hmm.
So yeah, they do have that verticalization.
All right. I hope that answers Apurva's query. Now we have a question from Shivani regarding backup plans. So, in case, did you plan something in case the UK law firm jobs didn't pan out? So, like, did you plan something? And given that your course was very practice oriented, how much relevance it has in India? So, like, I think it's
Yeah.
a double question.
So yes, of course. Please always have a backup plan, guys. Very important. I had a backup plan. I had already worked at GSA, so I knew that I would have probably liked to go back to JSA, or, if not, then I would have applied to law firms back in Bombay that do banking and finance. So I had a couple in mind. So that was my backup plan because, yeah, I mean, the work that I have done is in India, so it's obviously very relevant to law firms in India. So they will just consider this LLM to just be a 1 year break, and they'll probably have me back. But in terms of relevance of what I study here to India, not really. Um, I mean, both yes and no, because when I contribute in class here, I'm basically talking about how something works in India. And when I'm listening to other people talk, I'm listening to how something works in Mexico and how it works here in the UK. It's very different because the markets are very different. You have to understand the UK, the US, Singapore, these are very developed markets compared to India. So the market practice is also very, very different. There are a lot of things that are done a certain way in India, but when you come here and you're discussing something in class, and the professor tells you that this is how it works in the UK, you're shocked, and you're like, oh, but it's very different from how it works in India. So it doesn't have any direct relevance. It doesn't. But when you go back to India after doing an LLM, they firstly recognize that you have a master's, even if it may not be relevant, it looks good. And secondly, if it's a brand in itself. That also sort of helps when they're sort of shortlisting CVs to some extent, and they may not even necessarily cancel out your year that you spent here abroad. They might actually give the year back to you as experience eventually. So you're not really losing out on anything. But yeah, in terms of relevance, no, not really.
All right, that was really articulately answered. So now Harshvardhan asked about the financial cost. Like, is it like obviously it's not feasible, but how much cost? Like a general ballpark figure, and if after Cambridge, if someone does not want to go join a law firm, what are the other things that they can do, like after masters in corporate law, for example?
Yeah. Okay. So costs are very high. I will put it out there. In fact, the UK is much cheaper than the US. So if you're looking at the US, you're looking at 1 crore. Okay. Which includes your tuition, your living expenses, and whatever your other kharcha. Um, in the UK, also, I think in terms of ballpark, would easily be anywhere between 50 and 60 lakhs. Um, and I'm calculating, say, for 10 to 11 months, because there's always going to be that time when you come in a little before your course, but it's going to be about 50 to 60 lakhs. So it is expensive, and I'm not going to deny that at all, which is why it's a very calculated decision you need to make. If you're working at law firms, you will recover your cost soon enough, if that's how you're sort of looking at it. I looked at it as, yes, it's very expensive, but it's a once in a lifetime experience, so I'm going to do it. And I will recover this cost, I will recoup this cost over the years. So that was my plan. And whether you're doing it, I mean, even Indian law firms, they pay very well. I'm sure, I mean, you all are aware. So there's always an opportunity to recoup that cost. But yes, going in it is expensive. And okay, about career options. So, yes, not everybody does law firms. There are a lot of people, even if they do the MCL, like for example, in my class, there are people who want to, in fact, a fair number of people who want to do a PhD, even though it's a very practice oriented course. So they are here to learn about how it works in practice, but they are still looking at it from a very academic sense. But the course is very good, even from an academic sense, undoubtedly, because um, Cambridge is a very academic focused institution, right? So by the end of the day, the professors here care a lot more about academics than they do about practice. So, there are a lot of people who want to do PhDs. You can also try and apply for in house roles, although, if you don't have work experience, it's very difficult to get an in house role, because usually in house roles, whether it's a bank or a company or a fund, they usually want you to have either work experience or something as specific as work experience in an international law firm. So usually I would think that a law firm is your easiest bet, whether India or abroad. But yeah, in-house is a little difficult.
Okay. So, going forward with the next question. So, Kartike asks, like having appeared for all sorts of interviews in and around the legal field, can you point out to a few things, like few main things that the candidates should keep in mind while preparing during such while preparing and during such interviews? What are the main points they should take care about?
Understood. So, okay. So I will tell you what I had done, and maybe I'll be able to supplement that with some additional information. But see, the key thing is that what you need to remember when you are interviewing is that by the end of the day, they want to assess whether you are somebody who is A, curious, intellectually curious, B, somebody who is willing to put an effort and learn, and three, somebody who is trainable. Okay, that is the ultimate objective behind the interview. Now, how they take you through the interview process and grilling you and asking you a bunch of questions, that aside, this is the ultimate objective. So you need to try and do everything that you can to present yourself as these three things, right? So so at your level, okay, so if you were to apply now, unfortunately I don't have too much of an idea as to how interviews are at Indian law firms straight up, because for PPOs it works very differently. I didn't they had assessed me largely on the work that I had done and not really an interview round, but I do know that some people had given interviews. So at your level it would mostly be stuff like making sure that you are completely on top of important provisions of the Contract Act, important provisions of the Companies Act. You are very, very thorough with your CVs. At that point, because you're still junior in that sense, they might actually go on to ask you about, the research that you have done and, stuff like that. So you need to go over everything that you have in your CV. So if I come to say my CV today and how I had to prepare for Clifford Chance, um, I had to go through every single deal that I had put in, right? And by every single deal, I mean full on details. What did you have in those transaction documents? What were the provisions? What were the clauses? Why did the parties negotiate this? How could they have negotiated something else? Why did they do this? Why did they not? Right? So they're really looking at these details, and the reason they're trying to do this is because they are trying to understand how much in depth you understand what you have done. So that's the ultimate objective. So you need to kind of start in reverse. You need to first figure out what you think the interviewer wants out of you and then prepare from that backwards. Right. So I knew that this is what Clifford Chance is going to care about, because like I mentioned earlier, my work and the transactions I have done as such, they don't have a direct impact on the work that they do. So they want to understand how much in-depth knowledge I have about the stuff that I have done. In fact, usually at my level they do not go into like your publications and your research projects and stuff like that. But funnily enough, in my second round in Clifford Chance, the first question that was asked to me was about my was about one of my publications, and they asked me what my opinion was, what I had written, and why, and they actually discussed that with me. So you never know, you can be caught off guard. So be super prepared. Anything that you have done, okay, so at your level, since you'll be writing stuff about your internships, and if you, for example, say that I have assisted in a due diligence, then you need to know what that diligence was. You need to know okay, firstly, what was your role in that? Were you preparing a list of documents? Were you preparing a summary of documents? Were you assisting on the legal report? What were the issues that you had worked on? They don't expect you to know something that you had not worked on, because you don't get that kind of exposure, and they understand. But what are the issues that you worked on? Talk a little about that, right? Be very specific when you're writing these things on your CV. Don't just say I have worked on a diligence. Talk about what you have done on that diligence. And they might ask you, okay, what was this diligence about? Which company was acquiring which company and why, for example, right? Um, but details like that are important. So that's something you should keep in mind. And about things to keep in mind during the interview, I think cardinal rule is there is just no point panicking at all. I know that it makes the idea of interviewing is just super scary. It's very intimidating. You're interviewing with people who are extremely senior, very daunting looking, and it almost feels like they're out to get you, which is probably what is there on their minds as well. But there is zero point in panicking, because the moment you start panicking, you're going to go down a spiral. So you just need to be super confident, which is why I think it helps to be well prepared. You need to be super confident about who you are and what it is that you're bringing to the table, and you need to stick your ground with that, right? And please understand that there might be disappointments. An interview may not go well, a place that you want to go to might reject you, but that's okay. You need to learn from that, and that kind of adds to your confidence in some sense, right? And it's going to keep you better prepared for an opportunity that comes by later. So that's, I think, my biggest takeaway from my interviews.
Thank you so much, Neelasha, for going into such depths to address Kartikeya's query. Now, I think Toshika's query has been answered during your other questions, but I would like to convey her congratulations. And she's thanking you for bringing the dream so close to home, and it definitely feels a more tangible thing now to get into a magic circle for her. So, again, yeah, so again, there is a question from Karthike only. So, what is the financial assistance and scholarship opportunities available for students coming right after their bachelor's, or and the lawyers having worked for 3 4 years, such as yourself? So, are
Okay,
there any differences?
not really. So I'll tell you. See, there are a whole host of scholarships that are available. I unfortunately, so what happened is, okay, I'll tell you first about how it works with Cambridge. There's something called Cambridge Trust, which gives out 500 scholarships, uh, but to all students applying to Cambridge University across all streams and all, levels, whether it's undergrad, postgrad, MPhil, PhD, whatever. So that's super competitive. There are a bunch of these scholarships. There are some external scholarships as well. So if you look it up, um, there's uh, what's that called? I can't even remember. We had there's Fulbright, for example. We had somebody from our college who had gotten through Fulbright. So there are a bunch of these international scholarships, and then you have Tata Trust, for example, and you have Mahindra Trust, which I think give you like either an interest-free loan or a scholarship of a small amount. But you will have to do your research separately on scholarships, because unfortunately I had just no time in that sense, and I just like completely I was just trying to wing it, hoping that Cambridge would reach out to me. But there's Ashirbat, who's also a college alum, who's with us at Cambridge, who got, I don't know how many scholarships, but he's
Yeah,
fully
you got
funded. He's
two,
gotten some
like.
wonderful, yeah, and he's gotten one from Cambridge Trust, which is extremely prestigious. So please direct all your scholarship questions to him. He will be in a brilliant position to answer.
All right. So next question is from Shantanu. Is there a way for students from not so well recognized universities to get a vacation scheme or a training contact directly after their law school from India?
See, it's a little difficult, unfortunately. I won't say it's impossible, because there were a lot of things that were told to some of us that are impossible, but we found a way. It is going to be difficult because usually these VAC schemes come through to students at NLS, NALSA, NUJS, and all when they're in their third, fourth year. So it is difficult. But you can definitely see, what you need to do is just make sure that you're sitting on these websites regularly and you're watching out for the dates of when they open, and you know try and speak to people who have applied for VAC schemes and TCs at your level. So for example, like I think third, fourth year, or fourth, fifth year is when they do this in other universities. So it'll be super helpful if you reach out to somebody, say from NLS, NALSA, etc., and see what kind of stuff they have on their CVs, and do a direct application. There's no harm in applying. You can always apply. It doesn't cost anything, and it'll always, like, in fact, you'll have multiple versions of your CVs, which is helpful in the future. So do apply, but yeah, I mean, I will I will not disregard the fact that it is a little difficult.
All right. So do you think, like, it's a personal question, but do you think one of the reasons why these vacation schemes and training contracts come to the students of NLS, NALSAR, apart from them being a tier one, it's because their LM are there and maybe they
Yeah,
are pushing for them and all.
to some extent, yes. I mean, I do think that that has a major role to play because they are well recognized because of their alum, right? Now, NLS is apart, I mean, like you said, apart from the fact that NLS students are very good, there are so many people from NLS who are sitting at all these law firms and they've made partners and stuff like that and the clients and stuff, right? That's how it works with a well recognized institution.
Yeah.
So obviously, yeah, that helps. And eventually, these universities have tie-ups with, um, these firms abroad where they say that we'll send you a student for a vacation scheme, for example, and then you can assess them and see if you'd like to offer them a TC. But I'm sure there are people who make applications directly as well. So that's one thing to watch out for. But a TC vac scheme is not the only route, is
Oh,
the point that I'm trying to make, right? It is one route for sure, but it's not the only route to get to a foreign law firm. And there are advantages and disadvantages of both routes. That is, you do a vac scheme TC or you do an Indian law firm and then either apply directly or do a master's and then apply. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. It's important that you recognize what these are and take your pick. But if a TC vac scheme doesn't happen, then because it is a gamble to some extent, right? It's extremely competitive. So if that doesn't happen, you should have your backup ready and you should be willing to struggle it out in an Indian law firm first before thinking about these things. But at the same time, I must tell you that working at Indian law firms also, it's been a wonderful experience. It's absolutely cutting edge work, and there's no compromise whatsoever on quality or the kind of transactions that you're handling. So, yeah, if that's something that you're interested in, then you shouldn't bat an eyelid and be like, "Oh, I only want to go abroad," because yeah, it is a remarkable experience in that sense. It's very helpful to you personally in your career.
right. Again, Kartike, the standard question: importance of essays, recommendation, and social work. I think you
Yeah.
have told about research paper, but recommendation and social work is something you
Understood.
have
Okay,
said.
so essays also. Okay, so I think he's asking more from an application
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah,
So by essays, Karthik, I'm assuming you mean the statement of purpose. It really depends on the kind of university you. Okay, he is. Okay, so it really depends on the kind of university that you're looking at. Oxford, for example, will tell you on their page that they don't really care about your statement of purpose because it's more of. In fact, they only give you 300 words to write it. For them, a statement of purpose is more for more to understand your background, a little bit of your background, so that they sort of have that in mind when they're going through the rest of your application. So it really depends, but it's always good to. I mean, statement of purpose is actually the only thing in your application that really takes time. So it's always good to do a good job at your statement of purpose. You, it's helpful to do some Google research on how this is done. Speak to some people, and cardinal rule: never see somebody else's statement of purpose before you write your own because it heavily influences the kind of SOP that you write, and the whole point of an SOP is for you to be original, right? So talk to people, understand there's so much information available on Google. I had literally just done it off Google and I had spoken to one person who had not even applied for an LL.M. She was my best friend in NLUO. She applied to policy, and I had only discussed this SOP with her. So, I think what really helped me was to do a lot of Google research. But by the end of the day, I understand it's a very, very it's very specific and personal to you. So yeah, so that's the importance of SOPs in that sense. Recommendations are super important. So, which is why think about who you want to take your recommendations from. I'll give you an example of what I did. I had done a research project with Professor Umakant Varutal for about, I think, 4 to 6 months, where I was his research assistant for a presentation that he was making at Oxford Uni. So I had done this when I was in, I think, end of my fourth year, beginning of my fifth year, and I had reached out to him to check if he could give me a recommendation. Right now, it won't help if you have just done a little bit of work with somebody and then you ask them for a recommendation. I had also, submitted a lot of articles to him on his blog. I had taken a credit course with him. So the thing is, what you need to remember when you're reaching out to somebody for a recommendation is not how big they are or well known they are, because that's not really what the university cares about. Of course, it helps, but that's not really what the university cares about. It's the recommendation in itself. So choose somebody who you have done extensive work with, somebody who will be actually able to vouch for your credentials, right? To say that this person is very good, does very good research, is very meticulous, whatever, I mean, whatever it is that they wanted about you. Go to somebody who actually has, things to say about you, and also understand the kind of even from a relevance perspective. If, say, for example, I'm applying to a corporate course, it would ideally make sense for me to go to a corporate law professor. Now, if I go to a tort law professor, I can, but it's going to be a little bit of effort trying to tie in how good I am at torts and how that generally applies to how good I could be at corporate law. But yes, as far as recommendations is concerned, from an application perspective, it is super important. Social work, I had not done any social work. I will put it out there. I don't think it's not mandatory, but stuff like social work stands out a lot more from a scholarship perspective. So when you are applying, especially for these fully funded scholarships, they want to see your application to be, say, something that is more closely connected to society and how you can give back. So if you already have like a social work background, that's very helpful from a scholarship perspective. But yeah, it's not mandatory for sure.
Okay. I hope that answers his question. Now, Biswa has a question which is a little bit hard for me to understand. If you could just refer to the chat box with the third
Yeah.
last question.
What is the market like for a candidate with a second year master's from a foreign university apart from experience? That is, okay, less than 3 years in corporate litigation. Okay. Second year masters. What is a second year masters? Sorry. Oh, with the
Uh,
second masters.
yeah. I think Biswa can
I'm not
unmute
very.
and
Yeah, Biswa, do
explain.
you want to? Yeah, I'm not very clear.
Yeah, hi. You got it right. That's second masters.
Okay, but sorry. Could you reframe your question? I'm not very clear.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen a couple of my friends from non-law backgrounds pursuing two masters instead of going for a master's and then a doctoral research program. Like usually one is from the domestic universities and one is from abroad. So how does it work in law
Understood.
or in other places outside India with that kind of an approach?
So honestly, I don't see. I mean, I'm not very clear on why somebody would do a second master's degree. Unless, yeah, I understand if you've already done a master's in India, then you want to do it again abroad. But from a job perspective, it doesn't really mean anything. It's not adding any additional value, the fact that you have a second master's degree. Because, like I touched upon earlier, the fact that, okay, for example, if you're sitting for a placement here, the fact that you have a master's degree from this foreign university is what they're going to be looking at. They're not going to really care much about the fact that you have a master's degree in India as well. I do know, actually, now that you're mentioning it, I do know of a couple of people, especially I know that people from Brazil, they do a master's there because the master's here is not recognized in Brazil, but they want to come here because they want to try their hand at getting a job here. But if that doesn't work out, they need a master's in Brazil to get jobs in Brazil. So I understand why they do it. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, I don't think it has any additional sort of impact.
I mean, if I may add that, for example, in India, there aren't many national law universities that provide a master's in, say, data privacy or anything, data protection laws, for as that matter. But in Europe, it's a booming topic and it's going to be the future. So, what happens in those circumstances?
So great. I mean, you will be okay. So I'm assuming that you have a master's in India and then you want to make an application to a foreign university to do that master's. that's going to improve your chances in getting a master's here in some sense, because you've done some specialization academically in India during your first master's. But that's pretty much the relevance of it, right? So, because see, when you're looking at it from a job perspective, it's not your education experience but your work experience that counts. So if you have 2 masters, that's not adding much compared to having work ex that they're anyway going to consider. But yeah, as far as your question is concerned, I feel like the situation that you are sort of drawing up, that helps you secure, say, admission to a foreign university here.
Thank you.
All right. So I think it's the last question. Seeing from a very general layman perspective who doesn't know what it is to work in, in an Indian firm and a foreign firm. So you were a senior associate in JSA, but now your profile says an associate in Clifford Charles. So in a general perspective, it's a step down. But is it really?
Okay, so there's one thing to keep in mind. In India, a promotion to a senior associate happens in either 4 or 5 years. Abroad, it takes a little longer. Okay, they look at a 5-year, 6-year track, but they're also looking at 2 years of being a trainee. Okay, so that's one thing that's very important to consider. Second thing is, because I do not have experience in their market, they will always deduct my experience to some extent when they're hiring me there. So it is only a step down in absolute terms and in terms of a designation, but it's not a step down in any other sense, because if, for example, and I'll give you a more practical example. So in India, if my role is to, say, lead a certain type of transaction, the expectation when I move from a senior associate to an associate in a foreign law firm is still the same. Okay, it's just that obviously they're going to give me some cushioning, they're going to give me some help, but eventually within 6 months to 8 months to a year, their expectation will be that I'm going to be equivalent to a senior associate in India. But the designation changes because of, obviously, right, requirements and the fact that I don't know the market or the law. So that's, I think in that sense, that's one thing to remember. Sorry, what was the second part of your question? You'd asked me something else as well.
That was it. Designation point of view, it's a step down, but is it actually a step down? Like you explained, yeah. So, okay, 2 more questions came in. So, Weber, I think the first part of his question is answered. How well known are NLUs abroad? Do they know the existence of NLUs in foreign law firms or not? He
Also,
wants to.
how open are they to recruiting Indians? Okay, so honestly, there are tons and tons of Indians who are working at Magic Circle law firms. In fact, the team that I'm joining at Clifford Chance already has an Indian. So, and they specifically mentioned that to me. They, as usual, everybody thinks and knows that Indians are very, very hardworking. So Indians are there and they're everywhere. How well are NLUs known abroad? I'm not very sure, but at the same time, see, the partners that are sitting there are a mix of, there are some Indians as well. So I'm sure they talk about it, and they definitely know some of the well-established NLUs, I guess. But I think what's more relevant is that these Magic Circle law firms know Indian firms, and therefore when you apply to them, telling them that, okay, I worked at this firm in India, that immediately rings a bell and they know where you're from. So your national law school as such doesn't even matter to them. They didn't even ask me where I did my undergrad. They only cared about JSA in Cambridge, for example. Because it's not something that matters. From their perspective, NLU in my sort of career trajectory now is just too far away, because there's GSA and Cambridge in the middle, which is closer to, when I joined them, for example. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Right, that makes sense actually, because what they're looking for is what you did in Cambridge and JSA. So yeah. Importance of moots and publications, I think you mentioned in the beginning only, like you did not do any moot and still you are here.
Yeah, but I'll just throw some light on that, right? See, the thing about publications and moots is that okay, who wants to pursue a career in law firms, right? So, see, firstly, I will not deny that obviously you do publications and moods and stuff. It looks very nice on your CV. I mean, if I were to see somebody's CV and I see a lot of these achievements, I'm also going to be like, yeah, this is great, this is lovely. But keep in mind that it's your learning from these moods and publications that's important. It's it is a reflection of your hard work and consistency and dedication, and that is what you are trying to tell an employer through writing moods. Like, you're effective, I mean, writing about moods and publications on your CV, you're effectively trying to come across as somebody who cares about their time at law school and is not just wasting it away. You're somebody who is thinking about it. You are putting an effort to go through these experiences, and that is the sort of impression that you are trying to give these employers. So in an absolute sense, it does not matter. No, you can do one or the other. You can, I mean, ideally you should do at least something, only because what are you going to tell your employer, right? So your employer is going to be like, okay, sure, so what do you do in law school? You can't just say, oh, I have grades. You need to tell them that there's something else that you spend your time doing as well. So at least from that perspective, yes, I think you should try your hand at it. Also, because doing moods and publications really helps you in figuring out your areas of interest, and that's how you even figure out um, what practice area, for example, you want to join. How do you know you want to do arbitration or corporate law, or you want to litigate, right? Um, these are things that you sort of get some guidance on when you go through moods and publications in that sense.
Right. Perfect. Now, I think, uh, would you say that an international moot like Viz and all will attract recruiter for vacation scheme or for master admission purposes, like a well-known moot
Yeah.
and international moot?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, right? Naturally, it would. So, for example, you are applying for a vacation scheme, and then you say, "Yeah, I've done, like, I have these accolades in, say, Viz, and this in Jessup and this in Stetson." Of course, because it's a world-renowned thing. That is something that they know. They may not know about a lot of these Indian moods that we have, even though some of them are extremely, like, they're very, very big and very prestigious, right? They may not know about it. But yeah, obviously, I mean, I think from a very appearance perspective, for the lack of a better word, I think it would probably, it adds to it if you have an international mode.
Right. Not like, if you have any idea about it, like, does any other additional degree relating to law, like, many people do CS, like the
Mm.
company secretariat exam. So, does it help in any manner while applying for masters or LLM or in a foreign law firm for that sake? Like, does it add to the CV?
See, foreign law firm, I don't think so. But see, as far as, I'm not very sure. I don't really know many people who have these additional qualifications personally. I'm sure there are, because a lot of people do these qualifications. But personally, no. I mean, I don't think not doing it is a disadvantage. I mean, if I can put it that way. So you're not really like disadvantaged because you're not doing it. So yeah, I don't think you have to worry too much about that.
All right. So, if you had to do it all over again, would you do it any differently?
I wouldn't. It's been a stressful journey. I probably wouldn't, but honestly, I mean, yeah, I could have done things very differently. If you're asking me personally, I could have, but I think what's also very, very important is that you have to enjoy your time, whether it's during undergrad, whether it's, I mean, when you're working, it's very, very difficult to. So at least when you're studying, I think it's super important to enjoy your time, whether it's undergrad, whether it's postgrad, whatever it is. And I have had more than my fair share of fun. So I, yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly fine with, how things sort of shaped up for me. But yes, if you ask me, like, say in terms of advice, if I could do something differently, sure, I would. I wish I thought of doing a master's. At least I wish I had that idea in my head when I was doing my undergrad, because I would have focused on academics a little more. So I mean, like I mentioned earlier, see, if you want to sit for a job, you need to make sure that your grades are up. So I knew that I had to graduate with at least a 7 or 8. But if I had thought about a master's, I would have tried harder. I would have studied a little more to try and get gold medals and stuff, because these things help a lot, especially when you're applying to universities like Oxbridge or Harvard or Yale, for example. These are extremely academic oriented universities which uh, will really appreciate, a medal or two. So, that's probably what I would have done differently, maybe. But yeah, I still, I mean, I don't regret the fact that I didn't do it.
Yeah, like each experience matters.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
Kartikeya has a question on a very lighter note. Like, what was it when you first walked into that Cambridge entrance, that historic entrance, and all? Like,
Wow.
how your experience have been? Like,
Yeah, to be honest, it didn't hit me until maybe like last month, I guess, that I was here. Um, so yeah, it's a very good feeling. I'm really like, I'm out of words, because it really is just that feeling that I cannot express in words. But thanks, Kartikeya, because yeah, I mean, it just got me thinking. It is a great experience, and I'm going to encourage everybody to apply. It's a wonderful place. I'm very glad that Cambridge worked out for me. Whatever else may have worked out, not worked out, I am the most grateful for the fact that Cambridge worked out, because it's a beautiful town. I've met some lovely people here, and forget academics and all of that, right? But the experience in itself, and it's also, there's so much tradition that's associated with Cambridge, that I'm very glad to be a part of it.
yeah, I think one of the main reasons why it didn't hit you before, because you were so busy preparing for all these things. So maybe you'll take this time to actually travel
That's
and
very
enjoy.
kind of you, but
I think now you'll take the time to travel and what your friends have been doing for these months, and like
oh,
enjoy and embrace the feeling of being in Cambridge.
well, thank you so much. I hope that I'm able to execute some of these plans. I've been making a lot of plans, but
So I think that's it. Like, there are a lot of questions you answered, and we cannot be thankful enough. Nilasha, I've been getting texts like such an amazing session, such an informative session, and this is one of the best sessions people have been to. Like, not
oh
just
my
this
God.
year, and
I honestly, I mean, for me, I think my limited thing is I'm just hoping that I am, by the end of the session, you guys have enough, like, I'm able to give you guys enough insight to, because, the thing is, I know it could be extremely overwhelming. It sounds very intimidating and all of that, but please believe me that it's possible. When, when I was applying to even JSA for that matter, people had told me all sorts of things like, oh, you're from a small university, nobody cares, and la la la, all of that. Tier one university, I mean, tier one law firms, very difficult. But I remember, I'm sure a lot of you know Anand Gupta. He
yeah,
had gotten a PPO at SAM in his fourth year as well, and he used to also keep telling me that it just doesn't matter, like by the end of the day, it's you, and it's not about the fact that you come from a university that's not as recognized as yet. So all of this is super achievable. It just takes clarity of thought and some meticulous planning. And you guys have so much time. I'm assuming everybody who's logged in here at least is from NLUO, right? So,
yeah,
yeah. So I'm assuming you guys have, I mean, you guys have a lot of time to plan your careers. And yeah, I mean, even if something that you want doesn't work out immediately, there's always something that could work out a little later. And it's only when you look back and have time to reflect that you feel really good about it. But yeah, sure, when you're going through it, it's not fun. But know that it's a very long drawn process. It's all of this requires very long term commitment. So don't worry if something is not working out today, because you have your whole life ahead of you to plan for these things. And please understand that failures and rejections are a very integral part of it. And I have learned to embrace my rejections and failures and all my mistakes that I have made. And trying to put my learnings to good use every time I am met with a challenge. So yeah, that's thank you for coming to my TED Talk, everybody.
Thank you so much, Neelasha. Like, you put in so much insight and perspective to so many people, and I, on behalf of ARS, on behalf of all the students who are in like attending here, like a big thank you. I think you can see the texts, the
Yeah,
bombarding of the
very
text.
sweet of
That
all of
never
you.
happens. Let me just tell you, that never happens in a normal webinar or an interactive session. So yeah, you have clearly just stirred a lot of minds, and thank you so much for taking out time in a work day and in the middle of a work day to do this
No
session. We are
problem.
extremely grateful.
No problem. Thank you so much, guys. I feel very. There is a question that we missed, by the way, I think. No?
Is
Are
there?
we good?
Yeah, yeah, we are good.
Okay, fine. Okay, no problem. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. I'm very flattered, and yeah, this is a great turnout and some very very wonderful messages on this chat. So thank you so much, and thanks Khushi for organizing this, and to well, thanks to the entire team for organizing this. Um, yeah, it's been a pleasure to be here with you guys today.
Pleasure is all ours, and thank you so much. Have a great day ahead, and hope you, just find whatever you have been looking for and more.
Thank
So,
you so much. Good luck to all of you as well. Sorry, Sarjanya has a question. I, if we have
okay.
time, we can take it out.
Yeah, yeah,
Sarjanya,
sure.
I think, yeah, I think I'd seen some question on top, but if you could just repaste it.
How much does a course add
Ah,
value
got
to
it.
your CV or
Understood.
help
Okay.
you in getting? Yeah.
Doing any credit course. Okay. So, no problem. So, okay. Yes, I think it, see, depends. So, I had done this credit course that was offered on corporate governance by Professor Umakant Varutil. It was a fantastic course. My learning just, I mean, from a learning perspective, it was fantastic. It's also kind of nice to show because a lot of these courses, credit courses that are offered by professors who come from abroad, right? So, especially if you are applying to a university and that university, say, admissions council happens to know of this professor, it's good, right? It always looks impressive, and you're taking a course, it's academic, and any academic institution is going to appreciate it. So if you can take a credit course, please go for it. I know that, I mean, even when I was in NLUO, I know it's very competitive, but yeah, if you can do a credit course, just go for it. There's no harm. If you don't clear the assessment, you don't get the credit, but that's your worst case scenario. It does not affect your graduation from NLUO. But if you can, you should. In fact, I had done like I think 3 or 4 credit courses, but the only credit course that was really relevant to my Cambridge application was this corporate governance one, which is the only one I retained. The rest of it is on my degree, sure. But yeah, you should definitely do it, in my opinion.
So,
Yeah,
Vaibhav,
since we started again with the questions. Sure, no problem.
a lot of law firms, especially abroad, also value the knowledge of business. Would you say a crash course in MBA adds any value?
Crash course in MBA is huge. I don't even know what a crash course in MBA would be. But no, I mean, yes and no. In the sense that, of course, okay, so I'm just going to clarify as a lawyer, it's good to have commercial sense, but please know that on transactions, you're not taking any business calls. Okay, you're only providing legal advice. You do not need to have an MBA, or you don't even have to have a BBA degree or any exposure to, business as a discipline to be able to do well in transactions. We are not expected to provide business advice, except that obviously it is good, but that is something that you will pick up while you're working, right? Um, that's something that you pick up from just doing a lot of transactions, and you're always going to be on calls with business teams and stuff. You understand the product and the market and all of that through these calls and discussions and stuff. That's what you need to do, but you do not, I mean, some people do an MBA, but they do it because they want to continue in business, and then they come back to law because they realize that that's probably, what they should be doing. But I don't really know of anybody who does an MBA just to improve their, business knowledge to support their work at a law firm. So don't worry about it, basically.
I think you getting into a magic circle firm has really made people ambitious, and they just want to do everything in their power to just, make this
It's very kind, guys. But yeah, don't worry about it. It's, just have fun and enjoy your journey. That's what matters, because when you are interviewing with these firms, also they want to see some fun side to you. It's not just about, how much you've achieved in life. So really, they want to see some fun side to you as well. So please, do some fun things. Let that add to your personality. Please be happy. Um, and all the best.
Thank you so much, Neelasha. Thank you so much again. And we are very glad that you joined us. And it really, like, personally, I am planning to do something in corporate law. So it has really given me a lot of perspective. So thank you for that. And yeah, I think we can wrap it up and call it a session. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you
Wonderful,
again.
guys. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Bye bye.